Well, good evening, WNBA and LA Sparks fans, and welcome in to the LA Sparks 365 Network, your 24/7 365 comprehensive home of the WNBA and your two-time WNBA champion Los Angeles Sparks. And welcome in, folks, to the Wednesday night edition here of WNBA 365, coming away after an off night last night as we attended to, of course, folks, again, as you may know, again, folks, so we are now splitting time here between the channel and also now on blogtalkradio.com, folks. We have a great story to tell you, folks, about episode 2 last night. If you did not catch episode 2 of WNBA Radio last night on BTR, folks. Right now, we are awaiting Chris Woodmansee here, folks. He is on FaceTime, but right now he's taking care of a few things right now at the Heart Studios up in Anaheim, California. So for the meantime, Callan McClurg joining you, folks, here from Studio 171 in San Diego. Chris Woodmansee from the Heart Studios in Anaheim, California. We'll be dropping in sometime in a few moments here. Chris is taking care of a few things real quick at his house, so he will join us here shortly. And again, folks, a reminder that coming up at 10 o'clock tonight, back on Blog Talk Radio will be episode 3 of WNBA Radio, live and in full on blogtalkradio.com/LA Sparks 365. We'll have more about tonight's games, and those included, folks. Tonight on the show tonight, folks, we will recap Game 3 of the WNBA Eastern Conference Finals and start previewing the 2014 Boost Mobile WNBA Finals tonight. And we also will be giving out some grades and report cards to the Los Angeles Sparks season. And of course, folks, as well, we will talk about a pretty sad note for the LA Sparks franchise, their fan base, and the organization. But with that, folks, again, we will be joined shortly by Chris Woodmansee. Again, Chris is taking care of a few things right now at his house, so he'll be with us here sometime very soon. Now, folks, before we get to the breakdown of the game tonight, folks, we want to remind you that you folks can get involved with the program here on Twitter. You guys can hit us up on Twitter at LA Sparks 365, at LA Sparks 365. You guys can also hit me up on Twitter at CallanMac3. That's at CALLANMAC with the number 3. Or hit up Chris on Twitter. His handle is at LA SparksFan30. That is at LA SparksFan with the number 30. And we will go from there. And, of course, folks, coming up at 10 o'clock tonight is Blog Talk Radio for WNBA Radio Episode 3, coming up on BTR at the top of the hour, folks. Now, folks, to recap last night's show, if you folks did not catch us last night on Blog Talk Radio, folks, we had a great show last night and 3 excellent callers last night. We had a very big Sparks fan call in from San Diego. Then, folks, we were also able to talk to Huisha Bush, Hootie Hoo, who was the in-game PA announcer for the LA Sparks at Staples Center. And, folks, it was a honor and privilege, folks, to talk to former WNBA player Chastity Melvin last night, call into our show last night. Chastity, if you folks may remember, played for the Cleveland Rockers, the Mystics, the Sky during her career before calling it a career, and she also was a host on Blog Talk Radio. So we landed 2 fish in the pond, folks, and Hootie Hoo sent Chris Woodmansee, folks, a very nice message last night that Chris forwarded on to me last night on Facebook. And I'll read you folks this real quick before we get to our breakdown here of the games tonight. And also we are also using the the Los Angeles Sparks Fans for Life group on Facebook to also attract viewers and listeners to our show. But, folks, we had a great message sent to Chris from Huisha Bush, the LA Sparks PA announcer. Chris sent me the message, and Huisha says, quote, "No problem, man. You guys can hit me anytime. I'm really excited for you guys about the show. Y'all got Chastity Melvin on the second show. I'm telling you, it's only going to get bigger and better. I believe you'll have current players and coaches calling in soon. If there's ever anything I can do, don't hesitate to reach out," close quote. Folks, I mean, honestly, it was a project of mine to use Blog Talk Radio for something, because if you folks kind of remember a bit, or if you don't really remember a lot, but I used to host a sports motivational talk show on Blog Talk Radio over the summer last year, before I kind of cut ties with it because it was getting a bit old and a bit outdated as well. But I went back to BTR, folks, because it was a way where fans, like viewers out there, like Twitter followers that, love watching the network but wanted to get more I wanted to get more social, more interactive with people. And also, why we did last night, folks, try to attract WNBA writers, WNBA players, or people that know the game very well, folks. And for our second show, folks, to land Chastity Melvin, folks, a former player, was a huge honor and blessing for me, at least. You know, going into broadcasting and being able to already talk to athletes is one deal. But at the same time, though, it was more so done, folks, so the viewership, you know, all of our viewers on YouTube, our subs, our 101 followers on Twitter, and, you know, the 350 people that are in the Sparks fan group on Facebook can really get the talk and coverage of the WNBA and the Sparks that you will not get anywhere else because, as I've said before, folks, this is your only safe haven. Or actually, I should say now that YouTube and Blog Talk Radio, folks, are the only two places you will ever hear WNBA talk anytime in the future, and that's why we're here, folks. So we're basically here, folks, to clean up and give the WNBA and the Sparks some love, and we want every WNBA fan, every Sparks fan to call into our show at 10 o'clock. Now, folks, real quick about our schedule with Blog Talk Radio, folks, is there will be nights during the week where we will do both or do one or the other. Now, in the case, folks, with the radio show, we'll have a full week this week, and then we'll be bits and pieces on BTR because we're trying to get guests on like we have in the past, folks. I can confirm for you real quick that we right now are very close to confirming Sue Favor from Hoopism on one of our Saturday or Sunday shows on Blog Talk Radio, folks. But again, remember that we will have coverage, you know, all 7 days, but it's going to be either both or one of the networks, folks. Now, to learn more about our schedule, folks, stay connected to our Twitter handle at LA Sparks 365, folks, because tonight, when we posted our programming schedule, we sent you folks, or we told you folks via asterisk or up arrows what was going to be on where it was. So the asterisks mean it'll be on the Sparks network right here, and the arrows, the up arrows will mean it'll be on Blog Talk Radio. So with that, folks, again, we will work out that schedule. We'll let you folks about that every day of the week and before we close out here for the night. But, folks, to get down to business here, again, we're still waiting. Chris Woodmansee, folks. Again, Chris is taking care of something real quick at his house, so he'll join us here sometime very soon. If not, he'll join us here on WNBA Radio coming up here at 10 o'clock on Blog Talk Radio. Folks, we had a decisive Game 3 tonight in the WNBA Eastern Conference Finals, and for the first time in their franchise history, the Chicago Sky are on their way to the WNBA Finals with a 75-62 victory over the Indiana Fever. The game line stat total, or the line score for the Sky, 15-22, quarters 1 through 2, and 15-23, quarters 3 through 4 for a game total of 75. For the Fever, 11-18 in the first half, 16-17 in the second half, and 62 for their game total. Folks, to get to the game breakdown real quick, again, is unfortunately it's 2 Game 3s, yes, but it's 2 blowout games, though. We had the Game 3 blowout last night in Phoenix, and then tonight, folks, a game that was close for a bit, turned into a blowout in the fourth quarter, folks, which I think actually personally put a damper on the Game 3s because we all were expecting close games across Game 3 in both conferences. Where tonight we were last night and tonight, we unfortunately got stuck with a few games that were blown out of the water here tonight. To the box score for the Chicago Sky, Tamara Young, 8 points. Elena Delle Donne playing in limited minutes tonight, 4 points in 20 minutes of play due to her stiff back. Sylvia Fowles, 17. Courtney Vandersloot, 7. Epiphany Prince, 11. And Allie Quigley, game MVP off the bench, 24 points in 25 minutes played. Jessica Breland, 4 points. Jamira Faulkner, Sasha Goodlett, and Markeisha Gatlin, no points. Brandon and Clements once again held out because of coach's decision for the contest. Game total of 75 points for the game there. And for the Indiana Fever, Marissa Coleman had 7. Tamika Catching's very rough day for Catch at the office today, 9 points. Arlena Larkins in foul trouble tonight had 9 points. Shavante Zello, 16. Brianne January, 9. Karima Christmas had 6. Maggie Lucas had, check that real quick, folks. Brianne January had 9. Maggie Lucas, no points tonight, held out more so because of foul trouble as well tonight. 3 fouls in the first quarter. Lena Kaiser had 6, and also Lashia Clarendon, no points. Sydney Carter, Natasha Howard, and Crystal Thomas all held out coach's decision. The scoring shift, 2 times the lead change and 2 times the teams were tied. Game played tonight at the Bankers Life Fieldhouse in Indianapolis, Indiana. The officials tonight were Eric Bruton, Sue Blouch, and Tom Maurer. Total attendance 7,705, including Indiana Pacers star Paul George in attendance tonight. Time of the game, 1 hour and 58 minutes. Only technical foul of the game charged to Fever head coach Lynn Dunn. Folks, my thoughts about Game 3 here was it looked like the Fever folks never got their legs under them, and they were very out of sync and out of rhythm tonight in this contest. You could tell, though, I mean, they were, having turnovers after turnovers. I mean, I think they had 3 turnovers in the first 5 minutes of the first quarter of the game tonight, and they couldn't take advantage of a Chicago team that pretty much had Elena Delle Donne off and on in the game tonight because of her back problems, and they couldn't take advantage. They looked very shell-shocked and very, very fatigued, but also more so they just looked out of sync, out of rhythm because they are making turnovers that a team like the Fever should not have been making in those situations, where the Chicago Sky folks have basically came in here with house money, folks, again, where nobody but me and Chris thought that they would get to this point or even get past Indiana. Now, I know that I picked Indiana Game 1 and 2, folks, but when I was going through my head here of who to pick in this game, I thought, Chicago did win Game 3 in Atlanta, so I'm going to, put my poker chip saying, look, I'm going all in with Chicago tonight because they have that mentality, though, that they can win at any building, any time in a series, folks, and proving to me that they, and what really did it in, though, folks, is when Chicago beat Atlanta. I mean, Chris and I even thought about this, too, is, if Chicago can go in and beat Atlanta, the number 1 seed in their house in Game 3, why can't they beat the Fever in their own house in Game 3 as well to win the series? And look what they did, folks. So at this point in time, though, now everyone may have to take a step back now about giving the Mercury the 2014 WNBA title because Chicago is not going to go away anytime soon, folks. They are carrying a big wave of momentum in, folks. And again, the Fever are trying to replicate that 2012 Indiana Fever season and win the championship as we do finally bring on, for the first time in his life, folks, a clean-shaving Chris Woodmansee from the Annenhart Studios up in Anaheim, California. Chris, good evening. As you're going like this, because everyone can't see it, though, on FaceTime, dude. How's it going tonight?
Nothing much, just feels weird. Clean shave just seems weird.
Now, Chris, before we get to your only correct playoff prediction so far, Chris, I want to go back and revisit last night on WNBA Radio, Chris, how I was marveling here while you were gone, finishing up trimming that facial hair of yours, dude, is the participation we had last night, Chris, from one John Kegley, a big Sparks fan and one of my best friends, to Hootie Hoo, Huisha Bush, to former WNBA player Chastity Melvin calling in, Chris. Your thoughts about last night's show, and are you ready to get show number 3 underway in about 17 minutes, dude?
Yeah, I'm just ready and just nervous because what Hootie Hoo mentioned me about on Twitter, on Facebook, saying whatever I can do, I could don't hesitate and ask. So just nervous.
Chris, I was looking over the numbers on BTR today before I had, I think I was doing something, either watching the Padres play or whatever, Chris, but I had checked the numbers, folks. And, folks, as we're gonna break away here, folks, real quick from the WNBA talk, folks, real quick, to get to, basically, folks, how much we have been appreciated over the past 2 days, folks. We have had 43 total listens, 27 live listens, and 24 profile views. Now, through the 2 shows last night, folks, we have been listened to 73 times, 31 times live, and both shows have been downloaded 42 times through 48 hours. So, Chris, obviously word's getting around, man, and Chris, I will say who I'm nominating, folks, but I'm not going to say their names yet, but I have nominated a writer, a WNBA announcer, and 2 current players that aren't from L.A., to either listen or call into the show tonight, Chris. So, Chris, if you look back at last night, Chris, to land a PA announcer, Chris, and Hewish Bush, Chris, but above all, Chris, landing a former player, how great was that last night? Was that probably the best radio show we've ever done, or at least the best radio show ever done, perhaps, in sports radio history, perhaps? I don't know about that part, Chris, but Chris, I mean, we got a PA guy here, but then, Chris, as well, man, getting a former player on, Chris, in our second show. What do you think?
Just very often.
Now, Chris, as we get back on track here real quick, as we, again, folks, WNBA Radio, Episode 3, coming up here in T-minus 1450 and counting on Blog Talk Radio. Now, Chris, as we get back to the task at hand here, Chris, now I know that you and I were probably the only two people in the entire country to pick Chicago to win Game 3 in the WNBA Eastern Conference Finals, Chris. But as I said, though, earlier, is the Fever never got in rhythm tonight. They were very tentative, very, very playing the game under pressure and scrutiny because they knew that it would be the final time perhaps that you would see Lynn Dunn coaching. But, Chris, Chicago played a perfect game tonight, man, and Allie Quigley off the bench had 24 points, Chris. And, Chris, I know that EDD was sort of hit and miss. She only had 4 points because of her back problems, Chris. But sort of like when, Chris, sort of like when the Sparks beat the Fever back in July at home without Candace Parker, Chris. Tonight, the Sky proved, Chris, they can win without Elena Deladon. Your lasting thoughts about Game 3 tonight between Chicago and Indiana?
Just an awesome game. Even though I didn't watch it, but just a great game. And you're going to miss Coach Dunn in the WNBA.
Yeah, folks, in case you folks forgot, tonight was the last game for the legendary head coach Lynn Dunn. She'll be retiring after the season after spending 44 years of her life in women's basketball. Now, Chris, we get to the preview we are all waiting for of the 2014 Boost Mobile WNBA Finals, set to kick off on Sunday afternoon at 12:30 p.m. between the number 4 seed Eastern Conference champion Chicago Sky and right now, Chris, which is still everybody's favorite right now, the number 1 seed Western Conference champion Phoenix Mercury. Game 1, the schedule, by the way, folks, to let you folks know, Game 1 will be on Sunday in Phoenix, 12:30 p.m. pack time on ABC. Game 2 on Tuesday night at 6 o'clock in Phoenix. Game 3 and 4 will be in Chicago on the 12th and 14th at 5 and 2:30 Pacific time. And then Game 5, if needed, will be back in Phoenix at 6 o'clock on September 17th. Chris, I'm pretty sure the Fever are still favored, Chris, but as I said before you came on here, man, is don't jump to that conclusion just yet, folks, because the Sky have proven that Chris, they can win the games on the road, come back from a big lead and win the game, Chris. Chris, I'm putting a few chips right now, Chris, on Phoenix because of their overall season. But Chris, not to be denied, Chris, I'm putting some though on Chicago because the underdog team, Chris. Doesn't everyone, Chris? Basically, I mean, Chris, I think we all in some fashion love underdog teams, Chris. The ones that are always counted out, that are made fun of it, saying, "Oh, you got no chance against these guys, Chris," and they can prove everybody wrong, Chris. So I'm putting a few on Chicago, Chris, because of that underdog team mindset. But those still, Chris, putting some on the Mercury though because of their season, Chris. Chris, this might shape out to be one of the most entertaining finals in a few years, Chris. What are your thoughts about this upcoming series for the 2014 title?
I think it's going to be a great series between the Phoenix Mercury and for the first time in the WNBA Finals, Chicago Sky. I think it's going to be a great game. It'll probably game between all 5 games probably, or 4 games. And like I said once, the Chicago Sky beat Atlanta Dream. I said the Chicago Sky are going to go all the way, just like the Indiana Fever did, being the 4th seed, being the number 1 seed, and going all the way to be the champion. And I'm picking Chicago Sky to win it all.
So again, folks, the WNBA Finals kick off Sunday afternoon, September 7th, 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern on ABC. Now, Chris, real quickly here, we have to pass along a very sad note, folks, from the Los Angeles Sparks organization that longtime Sparks team photographer and Sports Page Magazine photographer Eric Wade passed away a couple days ago from complications of a heart attack sustained at the age of 47, I believe, recall seeing, Chris. Chris, I mean, I know that it's tough to talk about, it's tough sitting here sometimes and having to talk about, the passing of either players executives, front office personnel, Chris. But I mean, Chris, it doesn't matter if you're, the franchise player on a team, Chris, or if you're the team's water boy, Chris. Anytime someone passes in the organization, Chris, it's going to hurt everybody, Chris. And Eric Wade was a phenomenal photographer, Chris. I have used a lot of Eric's photos or some of Eric's photos, Chris, during some of the edits I've done of either Candace Parker or of the Sparks, Chris. And Eric, Chris, will be certainly missed by the entire LA Sparks and WNBA family, Chris, for his hard work and dedication to get all those photos of games put up on sportspagemagazine.com, Chris. And I know it kind of hit home with Stu Faber and Larry Burnett, Chris. They were very close with Eric, so we send thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the Wade family for the loss of a talented man, the passing of Eric Wade a few days ago from complications of a heart attack and heart failure. Chris, I got a tweet here real quick from Chicago Bears defensive end Lance Briggs, who says, "Congrats, ladies." And retweeting the tweet from the Chicago Sky about them being the 2014 Eastern Conference champs. And again, folks, Game 1 of the WNBA Finals, Chicago at Phoenix. Game time set for 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern time, over on ABC. Now, Chris, real quick, I need to send a shout-out real quick to Eric Nemchuk, who is a diehard Chicago Sky fan, Chris. And, Chris, he hit the nail on the head here with this tweet, Chris. I'm going to read to you real quick. Chris, Eric says, "It's really cool how so many people on here who aren't Sky or WNBA fans still congratulated me on the win tonight. Y'all are the best, Chris," which, of course, leads to a reply by me saying, "That's why the WNBA has the best fan base across all pro sports. No one loses their life because of the team you root for." And Eric replies back saying, "Exactly, the camaraderie in this league is second to none." Well, Chris, it's a broken record, yes, Chris, but it's the flat-out truth, man, that the camaraderie in this league, Chris, is one you're not going to find in any pro leagues, Chris. We know we're not going to, shoot somebody because they root for an opposing franchise, Chris. So it's a valid point, but it's all true at the same time, right?
Right.
So again, folks, we will recap real quick, but again, the Chicago Sky, for the first time in their brief franchise history, they are on their way to the WNBA Finals to take on the longtime WNBA veterans of the league, the 18-year-old Phoenix Mercury, in the WNBA Finals, kicking off again on Sunday night. Game time at 12:30 Eastern, at 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern time. That game can be seen on ABC. Now, Chris, again, I will say it again real quick, folks, but again, I have nominated one WNBA beat writer, the WNBA announcer on ESPN and ABC, and two current players that do not play for the Sparks, to listen and call into our next show, folks. Again, WNBA Radio episode numero tres is coming up at 10 o'clock here on blogtalkradio.com. Now, Chris, if we go back to last night, Chris, I know we're going to kind of repeat everything we said here on this one, on that one, Chris. But, Chris, like I said, though, and I brought up, though, is when I had the idea, Chris, to expand for the third time this network to the radio feed, Chris, this was more so used, Chris, in a way where we could be more sociable with the fans that are out there, and also because I thought it'd be cool, Chris, to have people call in like we had last night, though. But Chris, this was more so used that we could try to get WNBA writers, WNBA announcers, and above all, Chris, like last night, WNBA players to call in to talk about their experiences playing in the game or as analysts, basically, Chris. And Chris, when we got Chastity Melvin last night, that was an indication to me that we're going somewhere, Chris. And even as Hewish Bush said, Chris, he feels we will have current players and coaches calling in sometime soon, Chris. How pumped are you, man, to get ready for episode 3 in about 7 minutes here on, now 6 minutes here on BTR?
Just very pumped up and excited.
So again, folks, WNBA Radio coming your way in about 5 minutes and 40 seconds here on blogtalkradio.com. We will send the link to you folks out on twitter.com coming up here in just a moment. But, Chris, as we wrap up here to get ready to go over to BTR, your lasting thoughts on the Eastern Conference Finals, Chris, and your thoughts about the WNBA Finals coming up on Sunday afternoon.
Just can't wait for the WNBA Finals to start this Sunday coming up, and just can't wait.
Once again, folks, Chicago at Phoenix, number 4 versus number 1, David versus Goliath, Hercules versus Zeus, whatever you want to say, folks. It is a uphill climb. 4 versus 1, West versus East, all for the 2014 WNBA title. Sky at the Mercury, game time 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern on ABC. So with that, folks, we will see you folks on Blog Talk Radio at 10 o'clock. But until then, folks, have a safe night. Drive home safely. Thank you for coming. And good night now. This has been the LA Sparks 365 Network. We are Sparks. We are LA. We are the WNBA, folks. So see you folks on BTR at the top of the hour. Bye-bye.